The New Orleans Saints' newest NFL draft quarterback connection is sure to be a polarizing one. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, Iowa State wide receiver Jayden Higgins giving off some Michael Thomas vibes and more. The New Orleans Saints could have some major ripple effects if they invested in a top quarterback in this year's draft. And we're going to kick everything off with the newest quarterback connection, Jalen Milroe out of Alabama, perhaps one of the more polarizing quarterbacks that the New Orleans Saints have been connected to, but would show off and flex a muscle that the New Orleans Saints have not been able to prove in the last decade and a half. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The New Orleans Saints now connected to yet another quarterback, and probably the one quarterback that we hadn't really seen a lot of connective tissue with when it came to the New Orleans Saints outside of the Senior Bowl, and that is Alabama Crimson Tide passer, athletic, dynamic athlete, Jalen Milroe. And this is a polarizing one, much like Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado has been, because there are a lot of people that don't like the way that Jalen Milroe plays the quarterback position and have a lot of criticisms around him because they see him more as a dynamic runner than as a dynamic passer. And while I do think that there are truths in that, I do think that there is something that Jalen Milroe presents that the New Orleans Saints could potentially benefit from, and that is development potential. We've seen this in the NFL before. Players get knocked because they're quote-unquote running backs as opposed to quarterbacks and everything. And I'm not going to dive into all of the reasons around all of these different things, but what I will take time today is discussing the football of it all, which is that, listen, Jalen Milroe is a running quarterback. That's absolutely what it is that he does incredibly well. He's a dynamic athlete with the ball in his hands. But a lot of people want to know, can he get the ball out of his hands? And honestly, he's got a pretty nice deep ball. In fact, the big thing is that the short intermediate areas, you got to be able to throw the football in those areas, and you got to be able to do it accurately. You got to be able to do it with precision, 5 yards down the field, 15 yards down the field. You've got to be able to win in those areas, particularly in the middle of the field between the numbers. But obviously, if you can get the ball downfield outside the numbers, guys like Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, as well as Brandon Cooks give you the opportunity to be able to maximize that. But here's what this could mean for the New Orleans Saints. Let's say that Shedeur Sanders does as I expect and goes off the board before the New Orleans Saints draft at number 9. If he's there at number 9, you take him. I've been very consistent on that. He's great to me as a quarterback. I think he can be a franchise guy in the NFL. If he's there at 9, you take him. I just doubt he's going to be there at 9. So unless you're going to move up, I don't think that the Saints are going to get a hold of. So then the next question becomes, okay, then Cam Ward's off the board. Shedeur Sanders is off the board. You'd grab a playmaker, somebody that can help your offense, somebody that can help your defense, build your defensive line, your offensive line at number 9, whatever it is that you want there. And then you roll back around to either pick 40 or potentially look to move up from 40 for a guy like Jaxson Dart or for a guy like Jalen Milroe. And if you make that selection, basically what you're trying to do is develop a quarterback. And that's where I think Jalen Milroe is a really intriguing prospect, because Kellen Moore has at the top of his offense 3 former NFL quarterbacks. Himself as a former NFL quarterback, as well as the winningest quarterback in college football history. You also have Doug Nussmeier as the offensive coordinator, former New Orleans Saints coach, as well as Scott Tolzien, former NFL coach as well, who is now the New Orleans Saints quarterback coach. This offensive staff at the top in terms of the positions, the coaching staff positions that are going to best impact a quarterback or most immediately impact a quarterback are all former quarterbacks themselves. And therefore, they're built to develop a quarterback. That's why you do that. That's the hope with a situation like this. And so could the New Orleans Saints get something out of Jalen Milroe like the Philadelphia Eagles got out of Jalen Hurts, who faced similar criticism. Could the New Orleans Saints get something out of Jalen Milroe in the fashion, maybe not MVP level play, but in the same fashion that the Baltimore Ravens got out of Lamar Jackson, who faced similar criticisms coming into the NFL, and honestly, still faces some of those criticisms in the NFL, quite unfairly, I might add. And so a lot of people would shrug, cringe, or brush off the idea of a Jalen Milroe being successful in the NFL. But if you like the tools, if you like what he's able to do as a runner and feel that you can help him grow and develop as a passer, then you're taking that upon yourself as an organization to say, we can make something with this. We can mold something here. Now, here's the thing. In order for the Saints to be able to do that, they're probably going to have to move up in the second round or move back into the bottom of the first round. There's just a lot of those spots that might not take a quarterback in the first 8 selections where you could still see a quarterback going in the second round, right? Teams like the New York Jets, a team like the Las Vegas Raiders, they might not take a quarterback in the first round, even if Shedeur Sanders does fall. And then therefore, if the New Orleans Saints are still looking for a quarterback at pick 40, they might not be able to sit around and wait for those teams to take a second pass and potentially scoop up a Jalen Milroe, a Jaxson Dart, all that. So they'd probably have to mobilize in order to go and get that passer. But you're only doing that in the hopes of developing said passer. The other piece of this too is the Kellen Moore side of it. Actually, Kellen Moore, being a new head coach and a first-time head coach, is kind of perfectly equipped to be the coach for a guy like Jalen Milroe. It's a comfortable scenario for Jalen Milroe to end up in. He would be somebody that would be able to come in and join a new head coach that's got patience, that the organization is going to have patience with, that has time, and that's not going to be moved on from after just 1 year. And so there's a lot of development potential for Jalen Milroe behind or working with a head coach like Kellen Moore, who's in the situation that he's in, which is a very comfortable situation as a first-time head coach with an organization that has proven to be patient, sometimes to a fault, but has certainly proven to be patient. Jalen Milroe completed 64.3% of his passes last season for just 2,844 yards, 16 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, so that interception to touchdown rate, not ideal. And then, of course, as a runner, he was absolutely incredible. Ran 168 times for 762 rushing yards and 20 rushing touchdowns. The interesting thing there, though, is that the college statistics, the way that it's done, is that sacks are considered rushes and negative rushing yards as well. So he probably had, in terms of what it was that he did beyond that, even more in terms of scramble yards and all those other things. I'll have those numbers for a later episode this week. But it's a comfortable scenario also landing behind Derek Carr, who would have 2025 more than likely as the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. And then even if Derek Carr ends up injured and things like that, you don't have to be thrust into the situation as a starter. You could turn to a Spencer Rattler to step in again, just like you did last year. It's a comfortable scenario for Jalen Milroe to potentially develop. The pitfall is, what if he doesn't? Not a huge disappointment, right? You're rolling your dice on, I mean, at the worst scenario here, you get a phenomenal athlete that you try to find another way to utilize on the field. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think if you have the chance to develop him as a quarterback, you want the ball in his hands. You want the ball in the hands of that athlete every play. And so that's something that you could potentially look at. So it would be a polarizing situation. This is going to get a lot of hate because I didn't say anything bad about Jalen Milroe, and people love to say bad things about quarterbacks, but that's not really my game. When it comes to scouting, I want to know what a player can do. And there's a lot of tools for Jalen Milroe, and certainly would present a very interesting development piece for the New Orleans Saints in potentially developing a quarterback, which is something that they showed in each of their previous regimes they did not have the ability to do. Could Kellen Moore finally bring quarterback development to the Big Easy? And could it start with Jalen Milroe? We'll find out later on this month. Could start with Shedeur Sanders as well. Could start with Jaxson Dart as well. We'll see where things go. Coming up next, though, if the New Orleans Saints were to take a top quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, it's sure to have some ripple effects that all start with starting quarterback Derek Carr. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends over at Chewy. You've probably heard of Chewy. They've got everything that you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, whether you're looking for food, supplies, treats, even pet health care. Chewy makes it faster and easier and affordable. I love Chewy, used Chewy before, did like the auto ship stuff so that I never had to worry about, oh, am I going to run out of this? Am I going to run out of that? Had everything that I need to keep my pet taken care of and everything on, a weekly basis or a monthly basis, whatever it is that I needed. And everything got there super fast. I remember my dog being super happy every time a Chewy box showed up and all that. So always some of my favorite stuff. So Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And right now you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase is required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply, and see site for complete details. All right, family. If the New Orleans Saints get, I guess, really kind of the best case scenario in their NFL draft and land one of the top quarterbacks, I think Cam Ward, that's all said and done, he's going number 1 to the Tennessee Titans, but there's still this big question mark about Colorado passer Shedeur Sanders and where he lands. If he, as one of the top quarterbacks, lands in New Orleans, there's some major ripple effects that the New Orleans Saints will have to be ready for, will have to deal with, and will eventually have to remedy at a certain point. And the remedy is simple, right? The remedy is the easy part. You landed the quarterback. The remedy is making sure that that quarterback has everything they need and is supported, has everything they need to be successful, and then becomes your franchise passer, right? Or gets the opportunity to become your franchise quarterback. Drafting a quarterback at the top of any round, drafting a quarterback at number 1, number 2, number 9, number 40, like there's no guarantee that that passer will become your franchise quarterback. But if you're investing that highly in a quarterback, you're going to give them the opportunity. I think that's the biggest thing. So that remedies it. That's part of the situation that's built into the scenario as it is. But what to expect and how to manage it are going to be different conversations. What to expect when it comes to Derek Carr, where all of this really starts. The starting quarterback this year, last year, the year before, in Derek Carr, contract was restructured. There were reports that he wanted to test the market and see if there were opportunities to go elsewhere. I've heard some things that have confirmed that as well. And so I think there was some potential for a split that did not happen. And the New Orleans Saints not doing that and instead restructuring his contract effectively lock him down here in New Orleans. But is that conversation all said and done? The New Orleans Saints sit with still nearly 20 over, let's say north of $25 million, depending upon whose numbers you're looking at, in open salary cap space right now. Could the New Orleans Saints be ready to roll that over in order to take on a dead cap hit that could be set in by trading Derek Carr post June 1 this year? Now, it wouldn't have, trading him post June 1 this year has very little impact on this season's salary cap because things are already accounted for, the numbers are already folded in, all those other things. Then money that you lose is money that you've already invested, not new money that hits your books. But then $59 million accelerates rather into your 2026 overage. So if you can cut that in half or into a third, or even cut into that a fifth by rolling over $10 million or $10 to $12 million, then that ends up helping you out in next year's salary cap situation. But you're going to have to be able to navigate that situation. The New Orleans Saints and Derek Carr included are set to report for off-season workouts beginning in just a few days on April 14th. That's 10 days before the draft begins. What's the conversation like in the facility? What's the conversation like in the facility after April 24th if a quarterback is selected at number 9? Now, let's be real too in this whole situation. There's no one to feel bad for in this scenario. I'm just going to be real. It's good business by the New Orleans Saints if Shedeur Sanders is there at number 9 and they believe in him, right? Big caveat there, right? You have to believe in the guy. It's not just that the player's available. It's that the player's available and that you believe that that player can become your next franchise quarterback. Then you take that quarterback. There's no doubt about that. And, Lance Moore made the argument over on the Saints Squad show yesterday morning that, heck, if they like Jaxson Dart that much and believe that Jaxson Dart can be their starting quarterback moving forward and their franchise guy, and they have that much belief in that player, that you take him at number 9. Now, number 9 is a little rich for me when it comes to a quarterback that's not one of those top 2 quarterbacks in this year's draft. But I agree with the sentiment. You only select that quarterback if you believe that that quarterback is going to be your starter moving forward. And you only take a quarterback that high in confirmation of that. And so it's just good business at that situation. This is the most important position in football. As I always say, a lot of people call it the most important position in sports, in professional sports. You have to have somebody ready there. But the ripple effects are things you also have to be ready to manage. So there is the Derek Carr ripple effect, right? If you truly wanted out to begin with, drafting a quarterback at 9 isn't going to make him go, you know what? I was wrong. I really want to stick around. You know what I mean? That's not going to persuade him to want to stick around. Now, it's out of his control whether or not he does, unless he plans to like sit down and not play, which I just don't think that Derek Carr would do that. But I mean, for the Saints, if they feel like they have their guy, then what you waiting for? You know what I mean? The only difference would be, and this is the difference between, I don't know, there was a research piece done not too long ago that kind of showed that there's really no advantage to sitting a rookie quarterback for a year and then starting them later versus just starting them right away. The hit rate is about the same. Either the quarterback's good or the quarterback's not. Either the quarterback develops or the quarterback doesn't. Like, that's just kind of the end of the story. And so maybe you could say that, oh, well, if you do that, you lose a development year behind a veteran quarterback, but that's also not entirely true. Let's say the New Orleans Saints were to trade Derek Carr post June 1 to a team that didn't invest in a quarterback, a Cleveland Browns, for instance. And Derek Carr waives the no trade clause because he wants out of New Orleans, right? It's not about where he lands. It's about where he doesn't want to be. Let's play up that scenario. It's not me reporting. I'm playing the hypothetical. Let's say he does that, right? The Saints could go and find another veteran quarterback or try to return a veteran quarterback in a move where they end up moving Derek Carr to in an attempt to have somebody that starts for a few games to begin the season. Or they turn things over to Spencer Rattler instead of turning things over immediately to the rookie. Right? And now you're going to have some different opinions on that, right? You take a first round quarterback and then you go to your 5th round quarterback from the year before that was drafted by a different coaching staff and say, okay, you take the reins so that we can eventually hand it off to that first round quarterback. Not the greatest scenario for Spencer Rattler to be in, right? And probably something that would draw a lot of criticism from the New Orleans Saints by not just going to the guy that they have clearly told the entire world is their guy. I get that. But it's a route to go. But even if they didn't go that route, there is the additional ripple effect where Spencer Rattler is a part of the conversation, where Jake Haener is a part of the conversation. What do you do with the young guys when you've added another young guy? Now, if you go into the back part of the draft and you take a Kyle McCord or a Will Howard or somebody like that, even going back to the first conversation we had today, if you drafted a Jalen Milroe in the 2nd round, I don't think that those guys necessarily leap ahead of Spencer Rattler right away if the coaching staff believes in Spencer Rattler the way it sounds like they do, if the organization believes in Spencer Rattler the way that it sounds like they do. But if you draft somebody at number 1, or excuse me, my apologies, not at number 1, but in the 1st round, right, including trading into the 1st round, taking somebody at 9, then yeah, I think that person probably leaps the younger guys in your building. So then what do? Because you're not going to carry Derek Carr, a rookie quarterback, Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, and Ben DiNucci on your roster. And so some of those people are getting moved. If Derek Carr gets traded, you still have 4 quarterbacks. Ben DiNucci could stick around, and then you could try to trade one of the other 2 younger quarterbacks too, if there's a market available for them. It's a tough decision to make, but again, it's good business to invest in the quarterback position. And if the New Orleans Saints can do that with a top quarterback, there will be ripple effects, but ultimately, if that resolution is there, which is that player truly gets the opportunity to become the franchise quarterback, then all of it has been remedied once that young quarterback hits the field and then either finds success or doesn't find success, right? You got to figure out which way that'll go, but you only can figure that out in practice. You got to get there first. And there's a lot of events that take place between selecting that quarterback and that quarterback getting out on the field, especially if it's one of the top guys. Coming up next, if you're going to do that too, you might as well give one of those top guys a fantastic weapon. We've been talking about Jayden Higgins a lot here recently, and there's good reason why, because his name continues to rise up the boards as a potential perfect fit for the New Orleans Saints. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. New customers, when you join FanDuel, can place your first $5 bet and get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. Take $5, put it down on a heavy favorite tonight in NBA action, the Charlotte Hornets, 14-point underdogs to the Memphis Grizzlies. Put $5 down on the money line for the Memphis Grizzlies. Win a little bit when you do that, but then also get that $250 in bonus bets that you can then use on a ton, because FanDuel makes it so easy to get in on all of the action, whether it's picking on your favorite team or checking out player props like assists, steals, points scored, three-pointers, a ton that you can check out. And even after the game tips off, live betting paired with the same game parlay gives you the opportunity to win big. So don't miss out. Visit FanDuel.com today to claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints are in need of a big-bodied, physical playmaker at wide receiver, the likes of which they have not seen since the peak days of wide receiver Michael Thomas. In this year's wide receiver class provides a few of those options, and even a little bit more, maybe even a Michael Thomas and a bag of chips. And that's the way I would like to describe Jayden Higgins, the Iowa State Cyclones wide receiver. Jayden Higgins, 6'4". That's excellent. 80-inch wingspan, excellent. 91st percentile when it comes to that, so big time catch radius. 214 pounds, reeled in. A lot of these contested catches, works in the short and intermediate areas. He's kind of the perfect complement to what you have in Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Brandon Cooks in this year's wide receiver room for the New Orleans Saints. And so when I look at Jayden Higgins, it's a really interesting comparison, because you're still looking for that Michael Thomas-like role to be able to come in and complement those speed guys that are on your roster. And he himself brings speed. Despite all of that size, still ran a 4.47 as well at the NFL Combine, moves well, explosive vertical over 39 inches and everything. So you know he's got good explosive metrics. He's got good speed. Comes in, I believe it's a 9.63 RAS. Ended up putting up some nice numbers last year on just 87 receptions. He had 9 receiving touchdowns, 1,183 receiving yards as well. Jayden Higgins could be the best wide receiver in this class by the time that it's all said and done. Like the best wide receiver to be drafted from this class, because he gives you speed and also gives you size, can be a complementary piece as a big-bodied chain mover, but also can win those 50-50 balls in the end zone and in the red zone to give you a reliable option, while also giving you a reliable option to go in short distance situations on a 2nd and 3 where you decide you do want to put the ball in the air and you can run a quick slant to a big body that's going to get you 4 yards. It's a pretty nice situation. He also has the speed to be able to challenge while crossing the field as well. We know that this Kellen Moore offense is going to want to run crossers. He's going to want to challenge the middle of the field. He's going to want to stretch some of these defenses horizontally by making them chase receivers and potential pass catchers and route runners horizontally, sideline to sideline. And so a player like Jayden Higgins, who can run that deep over route that comes in underneath the safety depth, while you also have a streaking Rashid Shaheed running a post over the middle of the field, puts that deep safety in conflict. Do I drop back to try to take away Rashid Shaheed? Or do I bite down knowing that Jayden Higgins is coming across the field, and depending on the timing of those routes, that safety might bite down because he sees the crosser coming from Jayden Higgins and doesn't even realize Rashid Shaheed is going up over the top. Or Chris Olave, who also has 4.3 speed, or Brandon Cooks, who still has great speed, even 11 years in to the NFL. And so it becomes, or not it becomes. Well, yeah, I'll say, I think I've punched my microphone like 3 times in today's episode. I apologize. I'm reckless today. But yeah, I guess it becomes a real possibility that a guy like Jayden Higgins is just as valuable as a guy like Tedero McMillan in the first round, a guy like Alec Ayumanor who could potentially fall out of the first round, all those other pieces. And look, there are others as well. And I don't think that drafting a Jayden Higgins precludes you from also looking for like a yards after catch threat later on in the draft, depending upon where Kyle Williams goes out of Wazoo. Does he end up climbing all the way into the first round, or does he hold steady as a day 2 selection to where you can get him and Jayden Higgins. That's probably unrealistic, but an Elijah Badger, who's probably a day 3 guy out of Florida, the new basketball national champions, men's national basketball champion. Shout out to UConn for the women's title. Elijah Badger, another one of those guys. You get the ball in his hands and he can create with the ball in his hands. He's got return special ability, all these other things. And so even investing in the big-bodied wide receiver early on in the draft doesn't preclude you from also going to go and find the yards after catch guy that could also be very helpful for this New Orleans Saints offense as well. So lots of different things for the New Orleans Saints to be able to invest in. And you've got lots of different options for kind of the big-bodied receiver too. I've talked a bunch about Jayden Higgins over the course of the past couple of days, but we've highlighted Teteroa McMillan, a potential first-round pick, or the expected top 10 overall, or top 10 pick. What about Savion Williams coming out of TCU? Now, he did a lot of different things, right? He was asked to, run the ball as a running back. He was used as a receiver in the screen game, has great speed, good breakaway ability, good long speed, nice hands, all these other things too. Probably would be solidified to a single role once he gets to the NFL, but who knows, right? The New Orleans Saints, Kellen Moore, all about playing to players' superpowers. If the superpower is versatility, you got to build around that. You can make the same argument for Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end. And that's, I guess, the other thing that we should mention too, is you don't necessarily have to go wide receiver to get the big body pass catcher. You can go tight end if you wanted to find that as well. But I just wanted to highlight, there are the other big bodied pass catchers out there in this draft as well, in addition to a guy like Jayden Higgins. Jack Besh out of TCU as well. Nick Nash out of San Jose State much later on in the draft. Andrew Armstrong out of Alabama. I apologize. I'm so sorry. Out of Arkansas. Isaac Tesla also out of Arkansas. There's a lot of these players that you could potentially invest in that would give you size, that could give you some speed, that can give you some breakaway ability, and that can give you that big body pass catcher. But boy, I got to tell you, just watching the Jayden Higgins tape, seeing the way that he performs, watching his play demeanor, even in the run game, like his ability as a blocker and all these other things, that's going to be so appealing to so many different coaching staffs. And with Kellen Moore probably going to want a very balanced offense, you're looking for these guys to be able to contribute as run blockers as well, or at least be willing, all right, be willing blockers, as we like to call them. Even if you're not super effective, go out there and do it anyway. You know what I mean? Shout out to a guy like Dante Pettis, who is excellent with that. Not the biggest dude, but when you watch him on tape, he's blocking his tail off whenever there's a run play called and he's on the field. That kind of thing is a coach's dream. It's one of the reasons why I'm sure Dante Pettis was brought back for this year, or at least was given another contract. We'll see. He's got to make the roster still and all these other things. But it's one of the reasons why he's getting that opportunity is because of those types of contributions. You see that on Jayden Higgins tape as well, but you see it on a 6'4", 215, 214, 217 pound frame out there. Also packing the 4.47 speed and this enormous catch radius. That's a guy that gives you a little bit of the Michael Thomas and a bag of chips. And when I say bag of chips too, Michael Thomas ran a 4.57, which is about a 4.47 here when it came to Jayden Higgins. So you get a little bit of speed, you get the good route running, you get the big bodied, all that kind of stuff, all that. And so could absolutely see Jayden Higgins being a good fit. We'll see if he ends up creeping into the first round. He's getting a little bit of that buzz right now. But again, every player, it feels like, gets late first round buzz, right? I saw a tweet that made me laugh. I think it was Dane Brugler. It said oh, look, breaking, I've talked to scouts and there's going to be 67 first round picks. That's certainly what this feels like. Everybody's all of a sudden raising up in the first round. This happens every year. We'll see what happens, right? DK Metcalf fell into the second round. We'll see what happens here. But Jayden Higgins, absolutely a name that would make a lot of sense for the New Orleans Saints, would be a perfect fit for what it is that they need, and could be a perfect fit for Kellen Moore and his offense to give them that big bodied target as well. All right, y'all. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, we'll continue to track some of the latest rumors around the New Orleans Saints. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Quincy Riley as well, the safety that the New Orleans Saints recently had a visit with, and much more. So we're going to dive into all that in tomorrow's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jaxson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.